Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting for December 2nd, 10:30 a.m. here at City Hall in the Executive Conference Room. I'm going to go with the roll call. I'm Davita Russell, Chair. I am here. Vice Chair, Councilman Cobb.
Here.
Member Zenobia Sheets. Okay, so we're going to proceed with our agenda. First up is an update on Noble contract and Taylor Merchants Association. We will have from 10:30 to 11:45, and then at 11:45 we will go into zoning. Okay, so I will turn it over to Myra if you want to give an update on which one you want to go first.
Let's do Noble first.
Okay,
Okay, so
where are we at with the contract?
so Law Director Hannah and I have been going back and forth about the contract, and he just met me in the hallway and said that he read the proposed revisions that I made last night, and that he is getting back to me today, and that we are very close.
Okay. So,
So I don't know what they are, I mean, beyond what I sent.
okay, would you like to share what the revisions were?
Sure.
Would that be appropriate?
I'm
Yeah.
okay with it.
Okay. Share what the revisions he sent to you and.
Well, I don't have what he sent to me.
Okay, can
I
you,
only have what I sent to him.
okay,
So primarily, just if I can outline them, there were questions about a couple of things. One was a reference to the Ohio Revised Code that was in there about donations being made to people, any type of politics in Ohio. And so Matt Weimer looked into it a bit further and checked the Ohio Revised Code, which I have a copy of now if anybody wants to see it. And basically what it says is that donations can't be made up beyond $1,000 by any person. So I need that to be edited in the narrative of the contract.
okay,
Also, it just seemed like when it was presented to me, when he first sent it, he said that there were minor revisions. The whole thing pretty much was redlined. And so I don't understand what happened between the meeting that we had here and him sending it to me.
okay,
So I had a page of revisions that were sent to him. And I am clueless about why we ended up at this place. Because it just ended up being very different. I thought I had it with me and I'm sorry, I can't find it. But a lot of the agreement, and I do have the agreement here, and I wish that Matt was here because he was supposed to be here. And here he is, right on time. Yeah, we were talking about the Noble agreement. If you could kind of step in because I can't find all of my my information. So if you could step in and talk about this with me. So this is
because this, the Noble, just
This
just
is
to
not-
interrupt, right, no, the Noble and the Taylor's contract will mirror each other.
exactly.
Okay, so we need to make sure it's.
So one of the things that's in there also was something about the 501c3 having to be cleared within 6 months, and we have no authority over that because that's a federal thing, and IRS is running behind. And so I wanted to make sure that that was changed. The other component that we had mentioned in the revised grant proposal was that there is a 30-day window. And if the city has 30 days to look at it, and then we have to give it to the fiscal agent, which is Future Heights, that means that we're way behind paying our vendors. And so we wanted to change that to something much shorter.
Okay,
And so that was one of the proposals that we made. Matt, you wanna pick up from here?
Is Bill here?
he left and went downstairs to, I guess, revise the contract. So, but he's listening.
Okay.
So just go ahead.
Has he seen?
Yeah, he said he looked at it last night.
Okay.
When he came in and he said that he was gonna go downstairs to revise, he's received her changes and he was gonna go down to revise the contract and it should be ready today or tomorrow. So, but go ahead and just let us know what the revisions or the problems were in the contract, so.
Yeah, so I think timing was a big thing, like Myra said, given we have a fiscal agent, Future Heights, that has a period of time that they need to receive the information and have, their internal process prior to dispersing the money to us.
Right, and they
I
want
need you to
me,
speak up, Matt, a little bit so everybody can hear
they
you.
want me to clear the invoices first
Mhm.
and then have them submitted to them. So if there's any question on an invoice, that I would be able to look at the invoice first before they pay it.
Mhm.
So that's an extra few days. So we're looking at my time plus Future Heights time, and then the city takes 30 days. So that's an extended period of
Oh,
time
wow.
for a vendor to get paid.
And somewhere in there, there was also a requirement for a board resolution from the Merchant Association board. And the sequencing of these different pieces, in practice, I don't think it really works.
Mhm.
So that was one of the concerns.
And another concern was that if we do proceed with a mural program, that the city would have the option to select the arts committee that handles the review.
Mhm.
And so we did not want to go along with that, because what was discussed in previous meetings was that we would have the option to go with another arts group to evaluate it.
Mhm.
And so we didn't want that to become a city decision.
Mhm. Okay,
That was a big one,
Yeah.
okay,
a big change
okay.
Yeah.
after the last meeting.
Yeah, I think those were the major changes that we had.
Okay, so because whatever this contract has, the Taylor contract would
Mirror it,
mirror it.
exactly.
Okay. All right. So Bill is supposed to go over those today, from what he said when he left, and have a final draft, either today or tomorrow. So, and is that what he told you?
He said tomorrow. But the other thing that we had an issue with was just the way that it's written seems like, candidly, the people at Noble are being treated like a parent would treat a child going to a candy store. There are so many restrictions about the fact that usually with a grant, you're given the grant and you can spend the money. And I understand that the city wants to be a gatekeeper, but it seems restrictive.
So give us some examples.
Okay.
So any contract for $2,500 or above would require 2 bids.
And we got it, we can't hear you.
Any contract for $2,500 or higher would require Myra to get 2 bids. The bids would then need to be submitted to the city for approval. It doesn't specify who approves them. Also, the board of the association would have to pass a resolution authorizing the expenditure, but only after the services have been provided,
Right.
which
That
and
was
that's what I
major.
was getting at before. I think
That
it may
doesn't
have
make
just
sense.
been maybe some confusion or multiple people working on this, drafting it, and perhaps not tracking the changes, because I understand the intent, but I don't think in practice it works.
Yeah, because the person would already be paid and then they would be evaluated post-payment, which makes no sense. I mean, so the timeline of that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Then,
Yes.
I just want to say, just listening to this, thanks to the law director, because I think he should be here.
Yes.
I mean,
Right.
if you're, these are questions that he could, or I would say should
I
answer.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying don't keep talking about it.
No, I
No,
But I think it would
completely.
be better if
I appreciate that.
if we could just go one by one.
I would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So
Maybe
he'll
we
be-
should start with Taylor and then give Bill
Yes,
some
so-
time.
That helps.
Yeah, once he comes in, start with Taylor, and then once
Okay.
the law director comes in, then we can go over.
Great.
Goes over the contract.
Well, we have incredible.
Because all of so both contracts are gonna mirror each other, so
Right.
it's just one's gonna say Taylor, one's gonna say Nava.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Well, we have incredibly great news, and I wanted to thank Council Vice President Russell for putting us in touch with the county. Yesterday, Cuyahoga County granted us $10,000 of ARPA funds and surprised us by matching it. So they gave us $20,000 for Taylor. So thank you so much and for making that connection for us. And we were all very happy because that gives us the seed money that we need in order to hire an attorney. So thank you for that. The attorney is working just pro bono up to now, and we're paying him afterwards. And so has started moving, and we already have an EIN for Taylor. We already have the state nonprofit status for Taylor. Obviously the 501c3 situation, who knows what's happening with IRS, so we don't know when that's gonna come through.
Well, that was mentioned in at
the county meeting
the
too.
county meeting too. One of the county council persons said that they're going through the same process and it's taking a long time. Yes.
Yep, they're on backlog. So other than that, all of the materials that were required for Noble have been submitted to the law department. The narrative, everything else, updated budget. The budget had to be updated because the Hebrew Academy wanted to get involved with Taylor, and so we had to revise the budget accordingly. They are, by the way, very excited that they're part of the organization, which is terrific. We have started having meetings. We have a board already. Other good news is that we now have a bank on board on both boards. That's with Key. And again, thank you for making that connection. The person that is working with us from Key is very excited because she wants to go into community planning and development and understands and really is an advocate for banks giving money to communities.
Slide down. You can pull up a chair. Why don't you come up to the table?
I was just gonna say.
Oh, I didn't see that empty chair. I'm sorry. I didn't even see that chair.
She is hoping to mold her career so that she works in community advocacy for the bank, and recognizes that banks are obligated by the feds to give money back to communities and is very excited about the opportunity to work with Cleveland Heights. So we're very excited about bringing her on the board. And anything I'm missing here about what we're doing? I think that's about where we're at right now with
Where
Taylor.
does she work?
She's a Key.
Okay, downtown?
No, she's, I think Highland Heights.
Okay.
So we approved, this committee approved your budget
Right.
for Taylor. We took it out and sent it over. So as of right now, for the Taylor merchants, does the law department have everything that they need to move forward for this?
Yes, according to the materials that they needed for Noble, they have identical materials that our attorney has provided. Initially, he had done the paperwork to read that it was the Cedar Taylor Merchants Association, which was the previous organization. He's already filed different paperwork. Most of that's already come back, and I've uploaded it to the law department as soon as I've received it.
Okay, so Mr. Hannah,
Yes,
Director Hannah, do you have everything that you need for the Taylor Merchants Association as of right now, or are you missing any documents?
if we have everything that was provided for the NAVA materials, then we probably do have
It was,
everything that we need.
Okay,
I think in addition, it was my understanding that the economic development team was gonna be meeting with Myra this week to talk through Taylor and materials and so forth, and we were gonna talk before that. When is that meeting set?
Well, we were gonna try to do it after this today, but we may have to push a little bit depending upon how all that plays out, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then
so
we'll
there's
have a more.
paperwork with the planning department you need to get to him? No?
No.
Okay,
Well, maybe, they're gonna talk about the entire project, right? To make sure that everything is lined up. And my expectation would be that if there's anything that we don't have now, we would have it after that meeting.
okay.
But that's not a law department process, that's an economic development project, department project.
Okay. I'm just trying to get an update. I don't know what
Right,
the
so that's
process
the
has
update.
been, so.
Yeah, so as of right now, everything that I had sent for NABA also was sent for Taylor. The attorney put together all the paperwork, all of that stuff.
Okay, so if everything is done, do you think we may be able to get that one on by the 15th?
That's been the projected plan, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so did you told me already that you received some updates from Myra about the contract they're working on now for
Yeah, Wednesday
NABA.
afternoon, I got a page of comments, which I've reviewed.
Okay.
Myra wasn't available until yesterday and neither was I, so I looked at them last night after the council meeting
Oh,
and am prepared to discuss them. As I mentioned to Ms. Ornstein prior to this meeting, I don't see anything in there that's particularly problematic.
Okay.
I don't think some of the changes need to be made, but they should be easy to resolve.
all right. So is there anything that you all need to talk about regarding the contract before we move forward? I just want everything out on the table so that we can just really move this. Is there any?
So the Taylor one that I saw was from the original version of the NABA agreement. And then most recently, there were those changes, which I think
I
you
had said,
responded to and that you just referenced. Should we anticipate those changes for the Taylor agreement?
What changes are you referring to?
The most recent ones made to the NABA agreement.
Yes, so the NABA agreement was sent out the beginning of last week, Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then we received comments back later in the day on Wednesday. And yeah, those should be expected.
Can you,
Because from an efficiency standpoint, although the geographical areas are different, some of the particular activities, budget items may be different. The framework for the agreement from the city's standpoint should be essentially the same.
can you reveal what things you weren't okay with that I sent over in terms of the revisions?
I mean, if we want to walk through it, sure.
Yeah, that'd be,
Or we
can we do that?
this.
Yes,
Okay.
we're fine. I'm fine.
So the first comment, these are just bullets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of them, but they're
And
not
we
numbered.
apologize because we don't have what you have.
That's okay. I didn't know this
Okay.
was on the agenda, so yeah.
Yeah.
So I apologize that I didn't distribute anything. So the first one had to do with section 2.2. It currently reads, the city and grantee agree that they may amend in writing from time to time the services to be provided. The parties acknowledge and agree that the services to be provided under the agreement are not in the nature of legal or accounting services. There was a suggested change which would say the city and grantee agree that they may amend in writing from time to time the services to be provided. And then the new language suggested was with the understanding that any such amendments shall not diminish or reduce the total amount of funding allocated to grantee under the terms of this agreement as per ordinance 214/2025. And then the rest is the same. So my response to that, my notes were that that's not necessary and that because the parties need to agree in writing, both of them as to any changes that would be made, that language doesn't add anything. And so I would not recommend making that change.
And this was 2.2.
Yes.
Do we need the line that says that they are not in the nature of legal or accounting services?
I don't have a strong feeling about it. Do you have an objection to that language?
I don't think we
Being
need it in
present?
there.
Okay.
Do you think we need it in there?
It doesn't.
It doesn't matter either way. Okay.
The Merchant Association isn't providing legal services.
That's
or
right,
accounting
yeah.
or financial, so that's fine.
Okay.
The next one is section 2.3. Which currently says grantees shall ensure that the services are provided in a manner consistent with applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations and ordinance 214/2025. The city shall have the right to refuse services from or sought to be furnished by the grantee under this agreement for any lawful reason. The suggested change was that the city shall have the right to refuse services from or sought to be furnished by the grantee that are outside the scope of the proposal as outlined in Exhibit A of this agreement. And my thought there was that, again, the two parties can agree to amend the agreement in writing at any time. And one of the issues that had come up, and I know there was discussion going back and forth about landscaping and whether the city could fold more landscaping into its budget and handle more of those items that are currently sort of part of the budget for NABA. So I would think that that would be an amendment to the agreement that theoretically could impact the amount of money needed. Whether that money would be repurposed to a different use within NABA's area, I don't know, but I don't know why we would lock it out that it's only those things that are outside the scope of the proposal that the city might not agree to continue receiving.
I think the, hope from the Merchant Association would just be to, with this agreement, have some security in the total amount remaining what it is. And then within whatever iteration of the budget,
Just,
line items can move
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, we had
That
talked about fluidity
sense.
within the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I don't think there's anything that prohibits that now. That would be something that would be needed, that would need to be approved by both parties in writing in order for it to change.
Understood.
So
Yeah.
NABA could refuse to approve it, in which case there wouldn't be an amendment.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Is the intent that both associations work with economic development staff for much, if not all of the things discussed in the agreement?
I think the
Changes.
data, there has to be some point person within the city. And so, the contact person currently specified is the Director of Planning and Development. And then there are provisions, as you know, in the exhibits that provide for regular meetings with economic development staff to make sure that the goals of the organization and of the city and investing in the organization are met.
Totally makes sense.
is there a director of planning and development or designee, just in case the director is not available?
No, but that's not unusual.
Oh, no, was saying, was it in the contract or is it
It
accepted?
just says Eric Zamp, Director of Planning and Development.
And if Eric is not available,
Hi, Eric.
you're designee.
Eric will, that he works with, who can fix it.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Okay.
I just know, well, see, with me in contracts, once it's written, it's hard to get around that. If it says one thing, it's,
Yeah.
we
But
did
it's
that.
not a grant of power to Eric. It's
No, I
just
understand.
specifying him as the contact person.
I understand.
I think it's okay. I don't have an objection to putting the designee, but we don't want something being sent to a contact person that's not him
No, I
unless
understand,
there's a
yeah,
reason, so.
yeah, he would designate the person, so that would be understood. Right, no, I'm just,
We're
But
dotting
somebody's-
i's and crossing t's.
yeah, I know when I deal with contracts and it says designee, if that's designee is, say, for example, the superintendent, that means that's who it is, period, end of story. If it says designee, that means the superintendent can designate another person in their absence. But if it doesn't say that, that's that person, that's it. So that's why I said that. But you can go forward, I'm sorry. I was just explaining.
It's fine.
Okay.
So that was it on that one. The next one is, this comment is on sections 2.4 and 2.5. It says, these are not making sense. If the job is already completed, it is past the point at which quotes would be obtained, accepted, approved. And I think that they do make sense. It's a little complicated, but essentially those provisions say expenditures of funds pursuant to the agreement will be pursuant to a contract duly awarded by a resolution of grantees, NABA's governing board, that limits such expenditures to payments for goods and services authorized herein, which means they're things that are within the budget and the services defined, the delivery and or performance of which has already been completed, with such completion being verified by grantee's executive director, whether acting interim or other derivation thereof, or a board of directors. That's the first part. So that means that those are the projects and expenditures for which reimbursement will be provided under the agreement. The next one is the quoting process, and it says that unless it's impossible or impracticable, which we talked about in other contexts a couple of weeks back, at least 2 written quotes will be obtained for any purchase over $2,500. And at least 3 written quotes will be obtained for any purchase in excess of $5,000. They'll be submitted to or obtained by grantee and submitted to the city in PDF format. There's a note here that changes the capitalized PDF to a .pdf. I have no objection to that. We can go either way.
The question was, aren't those backwards? I mean, you're getting the quotes first and then the payment afterwards, approving the invoices afterwards, so shouldn't they be changed?
I don't have an objection to it. I think the first one is the general rule as to what expenditures of funds can be reimbursed. And the second one is, how do you get to the contracts for which you'd be submitting for reimbursement, which is the quoting requirements and the conflict of interest requirements.
So
Yes, go ahead.
practically speaking, Myra has a good or service that she needs to purchase for the association. If it's above 2,500, she gets 2 bids. Those bids are then submitted.
And they're sorry to interrupt, but they're quotes rather than bids because we didn't want to make it overly formal and put a lot of, burden on the organization to go through a formal advertising process and so forth. So it's just quotes.
The 2 quotes are then submitted to the city, to Eric. They're reviewed, I'm guessing.
So it goes on to say that, let's see. 2,500 doesn't require, unless it's a related party transaction, doesn't require prior city approval. $5,000 is the cutoff for prior city approval.
Okay.
So I have to get 2 bids, but I don't have to submit them to the city?
You would submit them at the time that the request is made for reimbursement.
Okay,
Yeah, so that everything lines up and
so you can see that I obtained the 2
Yeah.
quotes. Okay, all right.
Okay, for reimbursement. So then that is after the services are rendered and the board resolution is passed by the association board.
Right.
Okay. If there's an
What is the
issue,
board resolution? What is,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that
it's
is.
the association authorizing the contract for the services.
So it's just letting the board know that the executive director has obtained 2 quotes.
We'll go to the board and say, I'm seeking to purchase planters or whatever. Here's the 2 quotes. The association board would review and then pass a resolution authorizing Myra to enter the contract with one of the 2 or 3 if it's above
whoever
5.
selected. Yeah.
Doesn't it seem kind of cumbersome? I mean, it seems like a lot to get a quote through, to have multiple meetings to assess whether we're moving forward with something.
Could we just have the $5,000 be the threshold? And
Well, this is what council
25.
authorized, so I would suggest that it's going to be more efficient not to monkey with some of that language, but I don't think it has to be terribly cumbersome. Myra's in other roles in other organizations is very facile in dealing with boards and resolutions and getting approvals and so forth. And I would imagine that the process is the executive director would be getting quotes, making a decision about which quote makes the most sense, making a recommendation to the board, and then getting an approval of
So can
that
the-
recommendation.
When you're saying there's a resolution, can that just be something included in minutes? Or does it have to be a formal?
I'm gonna leave that question to your lawyer, but
Okay.
from the agreement standpoint, it's a resolution of the board.
Is it my understanding that for amounts under $5,000, that since there's no approval by the city, that there's no time that the city is going to take up in this process? And when Myra's sending it off almost as a, hey, we got together and did this, and here are the 2 bids. But we're not waiting for anything back from the city at that point. We can go ahead and move on with it. It's only for things of $5,000 or more that we would have any sort of wait for the city to come and approve. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
And the city approval is not legislative authority or council approval that's required. It's just an administrative approval. So that would presumably be something that would be routed through the Economic Development Department. They would look at it and say, oh, okay, here's the quotes, here's the resolution, everything lines up, good to go.
Okay, I'm president of the Taylor Merchants Association, I'm Laura, and My question is, I've sat on several other boards, admittedly not in Ohio, and I'm aware that things can change state to state. Usually as a board, our primary thing is actually looking at, ends and policies and, we approve a budget. But then the executive director has the flexibility to make all of these decisions without needing to go to the board for individual approvals. I am surprised that it isn't that we as a board are saying, these are the guidelines and these are the measures that we wish to say, these are the buckets you have to work with, and these are the boundaries you need to operate within, and this is the goal that you have to achieve. I'm surprised that it feels very much like micromanaging someone who would be a capable executive director to have it set up in this way. And I've sat on some, as I say, trade association boards. I've done many. I'm surprised by this apparatus. I'm not upset about the idea that if there needs to be a city approval thing that Myra would suggest this. The resolution just feels out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it is comparison.
The resolution,
The idea that for any expenditure over $5,000, even if we have as a board of directors of a nonprofit said this is our budget and this is how the funds are allocated, that our executive director would have to come to us to get approval for things that are already within this allocated budget.
well, I don't know how frequently the board would be meeting, but any regularly scheduled board meeting, any regular board meeting schedule should permit this stuff to just happen on an ongoing basis. I don't know the size of the budgets that were involved in the board.
A couple $1 million.
So I think that might be a critical distinction. The city has not done something exactly like this previously, and there was a lot of concern on the part of council. I guess I'm pointing over at council members, that there's a good track record and diligence about what the expenditures are for, and in the public context,
Okay.
the Ohio Constitution requires that public funds can only be spent for public purposes.
Mhm.
And so there was an initial evaluation to ensure that the matters covered within the budget would constitute a public purpose in furtherance of supporting the Noble area. And that was satisfied.
Mhm.
And these are ways of just shoring up that determination. And again, this is what council approved.
I'm not disputing
If there's a desire to change it, that's something that council could take up.
Mhm.
That would require another council meeting, maybe one, maybe more, I don't know, but
I don't recall I don't recall of us agreeing to this. I saw that it was written up and I think Mr. Kopp went through a couple of things that he wanted changed or added.
Right.
But I didn't know about all of the rest. But it does seem a little with the resolution, is that required in the other contracts that we do a resolution upon approval? I'm just curious.
so we haven't done a contract exactly like this one.
Mhm.
But in the ARPA context, there were a number of contracts that were similar. This is some organization. Okay.
I
Bill.
remember going for.
This is the ARPA grant to the Coventry City.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was gonna reference.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of similar safeguards and provisions and
I did.
this is a brand new organization, okay? You're getting public funds. From my perspective as a council member, it's not to you, it would be any organization that is seeking public funds. I want safeguards in place to make sure that the money is appropriately spent. I don't know the specifics, but I will speak to the other SIDs. Let's say if it's every SID director has got a amount of money that they need to come to the board to seek approval for. And it's a relatively small amount. So we're not imposing any restrictions on this organization that do not currently exist within the bylaws of other SIDs or are not provisions of the contracts that we utilized in distributing ARPA money.
Okay.
Excuse me, I beg to differ with what you're saying. As the former executive director of Coventry and Cedar Fairmount, I was given a budget and I met with the board members. every other month and reviewed what my spending was, but I did not have to get pre-approval from anybody on the board, and they worked, as Laura had referenced, they provided me with a budget as long as I stayed within the realm of that budget and reported back to them at the board meeting. Everything was copacetic. So there wasn't any of this spend $2,000 and report back. And I understand that this is somewhat different because it's not a SID and they are city funds. But my previous comment, I will reiterate, I think that this is prohibitive in many ways. And I think that we are being treated like children, and having to respond back and forth constantly with every expenditure. And that just seems like a voice from the city that you don't trust these districts for whatever reason. And I know that the Noble people in particular have felt really psychologically damaged. I can't even say anything lighter than that by what's been happening here, and have left meetings just feeling very downtrodden that they have been seeking money for a long time and they just keep getting caveats in the way. And this seems like there are a lot of caveats built into this particular grant. And ARPA situation, because it was federal funds, had very, very stringent requirements, because working with restaurants, a lot of them received ARPA funding. And the ARPA funding that they received had to be specific because of the nature of ARPA funds with the feds. But I also will say that yesterday when we went through Cuyahoga County and received ARPA funds for $20,000, that we were immediately approved. We had none of this discussed. We got through in 10 minutes and received the funding right away. And so I don't understand what the difference is between the treatment that we're getting from the city and the treatment that we're getting from the county. It's totally incongruous. And so I don't know why the city is causing both districts to go through all of these hoops and all of these meetings when we got $20,000 immediately from the county for Taylor and $10,000 immediately for Noble. It just doesn't make sense.
So twice as much for Taylor as Noble?
They didn't have the money in the budget. They found that they had extra money available. And so they matched the 10 at the last minute and gave us another 10. But in the situation with the Noble meeting, we were done in 5 minutes, and with Taylor, we were done in 10, maybe because we got the extra 10, I don't know. But we left there on a high, knowing that they supported us and thanked us so much for doing what we're doing for the communities. And we haven't received that kind of input from the city, candidly, which is very sad.
Well, I would say a couple things. Number one, as you said, in the SID context, those are monies that are generated by the members of the SID taxing their own properties and generating those funds.
Understood.
So they're not public funds in the same way and not subject to the same constitutional scrutiny that this grant of funds is. So that's point one. There were also, as you know, a number of concerns expressed about the amount of the overall budget that could go to your business in terms of marketing and advertising and things of that nature. And so some of these provisions were put in place just to ensure that everything lines up and that the conflict of interest provisions are there for that reason. Some of the quoting requirements are there for that reason. Again, just as protections to ensure that public funds are being spent for a public purpose and not to enrich a private person or business.
Understood.
And as of the beginning of last week, it seemed like all of this was copacetic, to use your term. And we got these comments on Wednesday, and I can provide further responses to these, but I'm a little unclear on what changed between Wednesday and today. Because these objections aren't really even in these comments, so these are new.
When we originally left the meeting with the first draft, we were told that there was going to be a minor change, and then I got this and it's redlined a lot. There were a lot of changes that weren't indicated in the initial run. And I understand that you went back to the drawing board and tried to input things that were discussed in meetings. But the more things that were added to this, the more prohibitive it was for the people that are dealing with it on this end. And so the response that I was getting when I showed the draft to the merchants was not positive, candidly. I mean, they felt like, why are we going through all of this? And
Could I see that for a moment?
yeah, this is what you sent.
No, I recognize it, I just can't read it. I can't read it from here. Thank you.
Cause I left the meeting that we were gonna add the comment or the one thing that you wanted in the contract was
Series of people we have.
yeah, the conflict, thank you,
Yeah,
Gail,
and
the
that's-
conflict of interest.
That's added.
And I thought that was the only thing that was supposed to be added.
While Bill's looking, Madam President, can I ask a
Do
question?
you have page 2, Myra, or is that?
That was everything I.
Do you know
was
when the
page two?
Coventry
Oh, wait, I'm sorry,
said-
no.
I had page 2, sorry.
He had page two.
Agreement was reached? Bill, do you recall, we gave, the Coventry said $300 and some thousand in December of 2023. When was that contract finally completed?
December of 2024.
Okay. So just to put some context, it took a year for us to get the agreement together with Coventry Sid, where we gave them 300,000 plus of ARPA dollars.
Okay.
So to suggest or argue that we are slow walking this is simply not true. No one has imposed any extra burden on that, and we were dealing with an organization that was already in existence. Now is not the time, in my opinion, to be relitigating all this, okay? You guys are getting a good chunk of city money. I believe that the requirements that are being imposed are, and we'll agree to disagree on this, are reasonable.
Well, and
So I
if I could
think
jump
under
in,
the
and
other
can I
ones-
respond to Ms.
Yeah.
Ornstein?
Can I
I'm
see
sorry.
the Coventry?
Yeah,
But under the old opera contracts, we were under different administration and everything was moving turtleneck. We could not get a lot of things done, that was, supposed to be done at the time.
so with respect to the assertion that there were substantial red line changes from the prior version to this one, the quoting requirements were all there. That's not red line, that was original text, it's months old at this point. There was a requirement that addressed a very specific concern about art, which, you know, we came up with a creative way to help me. You thanked me at the meeting for doing that.
Yep.
There's language here that just says, these general quoting requirements shall include expenditures for art, including but not limited to murals, which was the solution that was generated during the meeting to say, city approval is already required, and so there's no
Exactly.
necessity to go out and like engage some additional organization, which could certainly potentially slow things down and bog the works up. So that's the first red line. The next one is the conflict of interest, which was discussed at length in, yes?
Sorry. As to the public art aspect, maybe I'm misunderstanding where the contract's at currently. So that requirement is no longer in it to have to go and engage a third party
Correct.
consultant. Okay,
Yeah,
so
correct.
everyone's
was taken
fine
out.
with
Yeah.
the murals, the amount.
Yeah, that was the
Heights
resolution
Arts.
reached during the meeting to try to make sure this could be signed as quickly as possible. It says that the general quoting and purchasing requirements shall include expenditures for art, including but not limited to murals. It's understood that the city, in determining whether to approve any such requested expenditure, so if it's over 5,000, there's going to be that prior city approval requirement.
Yep.
May enlist the assistance of arts organizations in the community in order to properly evaluate any artwork for which an expenditure of funds is received pursuant to this agreement as proposed, provided, however, that the city shall not unreasonably refuse approval nor unreasonably delay a decision on approval of any such request.
Okay, so this 50,000 or 100,000 for Heights Arts being discussed is wholly.
It's completely separate, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that isn't part of our agreement with them.
So the idea here, this new red line text was
Last night's
to
proposal from Heights.
put to the side the concerns about whether additional city involvement in the art process should be required, and it also includes that language to ensure that the city doesn't slow that down in an improper way.
Yeah. which is what we wanted to achieve, so.
And then there's the conflict of interest red lines, which are the first half of the next page, which come out of the revised code essentially. And that was discussed at length in the meeting as well. The application to IRS for tax exempt status, and there was a comment provided Wednesday night about whether NABA could commit to obtaining that designation within 6 months. I think that's reasonable. So I think that my response was going to be that we should include, as was suggested, an ASAP notification when it is received. And at 6 months, if it hasn't been received, that the parties be, that the city be made aware of that, and that the parties consider how to address any needs to change the agreement as a result. And that in the meantime, Heights Arts would continue to function as, the Future Heights would continue to function as the fiscal agent.
Yeah, we
And
knew
that
that in
was,
there.
that's the next change.
So Bill, so just so
Future
I'm
Heights as
clear,
fiscal agent.
so the whole reference to the 6 months is out as of right now?
Well, I think we want to have a 6-month
Review,
review, yeah.
okay, review is fine, but a
Because
reference,
yeah.
yeah, I understand that you want us to update you on the status.
Because that also relates back to this constitutional, 501c3 status shortcuts the city's process for ascertaining that these funds are being used for a public purpose.
Understood.
So there's a lot
Okay.
of benefit to both parties of achieving that, so.
Absolutely understand.
But the point about, especially maybe in today's world, being able to commit the IRS to processing things in a timeframe certain, that's a fair point, so.
Okay, so what is the phrasing gonna be in terms of that?
I'll send it to you, it's
Okay,
essentially
that's up
gonna
to
be
review and
an
it's not,
update, right?
okay, fine.
And of course, that the Future Heights, I want to say that carefully, role as fiscal agent would continue until 501c3 status is
And that's what our relationship is with them anyway.
And then the only other those are the two main changes, 2 or 3, whatever I just mentioned. And then the only other real one is grantee and city agreeing that this program is important and provides valuable benefits to the Noble area, and that that's the intention of the program. And that as a result, not less than 6 months prior to the expiration of the term, NABA will provide a proposal to the city about how these types of activities could continue to be carried on post the term of this agreement.
Okay, so the only other thing I have a question about is the donation information in there. Because it references an Ohio code.
Yeah,
And so we looked into that, or actually an attorney looked into it further. And the donation situation specified in the code, according to the attorney, was that people could make donations privately or by their corporations to any kind of Ohio official up to $999. That the $1,000 was the benchmark, that you can't donate more than $1,000. And that's not specified in there, so I wanted some kind of change in there about that.
well, it's not specified because it just says that it'll be code compliant, that nothing that's not code compliant will occur. So it incorporates
Does
those
that cover
standards.
us?
It does, and in addition, as you remember, there was a kerfuffle about what some people saw as a potential fundraiser for a political candidate
Yeah.
that
That really wasn't, but
NABA
yeah.
or somebody involved with NABA was potentially putting on, and then there was an explanation that's not really what it was. As we discussed, this isn't privileged because you're not my client.
No, it's
But but the conversation around that and the concern of the city was that a 501c3 cannot engage in political activity, and if it does,
Absolutely.
it absolutely loses that exemption.
absolutely.
And so this language was placed there to, in a subtle way, which has now been brought out in the open, ensure that those guardrails are in place so that, even inadvertently, the organization doesn't stumble into a situation where it loses its exemption, because that's not going to be good for NABA, that's not good for the city and for the benefits of the investment that's being made.
Okay,
That
so
really
this is more to
upsets
cover,
the entire apple cart.
this is more to cover the organization, the 501c3 than it is to cover the parties within the 501c3. Am I
Yeah,
agree?
subject to Ohio law, right?
Right,
There are
okay, so-
requirements that
so-
apply, and those are referenced.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah, I think everybody understands 501c3 cannot do that,
Right,
but individually
absolutely.
you can do what you want.
absolutely, and there
But
was a
that-
misunderstanding
that-
about that
yeah.
whole fundraiser
track
situation.
record, that's not exactly right, but that concern that had become public was a
Yeah.
reason to make sure that this was sort of tightly
Understand.
buttoned up.
Okay,
That's all.
One question, somewhere in the agreement, under things that the association couldn't expend city funds on, was insurance. Does that include D&O insurance?
Let me find
we
it.
are covered. You know that that's a line item in the budget, right?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
For $3.3.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can look at that. I thought we also had an insurance requirement in here, but we may
There
have
was an
taken-
insurance requirement in there,
Okay,
but it didn't specify what kind of insurance. And so I had assumed that we had to cover D&O.
yeah, so I can review that and follow up with you
Okay,
later today.
so does this cover us with the landscaping conversation that's been ongoing in terms of the fluidity of the budget?
Sure.
I'm not trying to understand the question.
So if the line items for landscaping come out because the city then absorbs the landscaping cost, then is that covered by the contract that we still would maintain the same budget that you have given us
Unless
That's
it were
been out.
amended, yes.
unless the city comes back and has a question about it or
Well,
Would it have to be
it would
both
be
parties that
amended
would
by
amend
both
it?
parties.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And I
what
think
if-
that's one of the purposes of the ongoing, dealings with economic development is so that those things can be worked through and make sure that everyone's getting sort of maximum bang for the buck.
Okay, so then planning and development is the ultimate point for us in terms of making that determination, it's not city council. Thank you, Eric.
It's definitely not city council.
It's not city
I mean,
council.
that
Okay,
procedurally, that would have the impact of slowing things down.
so
They are
basically
very,
this
they are
guy-
very efficient and they work very quickly, don't get me wrong, but but that would likely slow things down.
alright, so this person sitting behind me is now officially our gatekeeper, correct?
He's the contact person, yes.
Right, yes,
And then I
okay.
think on
Alright.
a weekly
Thank
or
you.
monthly basis, we'll likely all be dealing with them.
Alright, thank you. And the person sitting behind me, for all intents and purposes, is Eric Senft. So
No, I
welcome to
think
the
it
group.
really is, not even intents and purposes.
No, I mean for anybody watching this who doesn't understand who I'm referencing.
So,
Oh.
are there any more questions regarding the contracts?
I really appreciate the clarity.
Yeah.
Really
Me too,
do.
thank you very
Okay.
much, that was super helpful.
I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of this up because
It's better all in one room.
it's been a lot of work, it's been done with only the best interests of Nava and the city, in mind, and I feel like it's a document that should allow this to function in a way that throws off a lot of benefits, so.
I think I needed to know more from you about where the boundaries were. And so having you in this meeting was very helpful, so thank you.
Sure.
No more questions? So this contract, hopefully if Myra, once you meet with the planning department and they don't need any more information from you, Bill is good to go with all of the clarification changes or whatever modifications he's gonna do with that contract.
And
We're all
this will-
good to go. Nobody has anything else that needs to be given to the law department for this contract, correct?
And the Taylor contract will mirror the Nava contract, correct?
That's my expectation, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't conceive of a reason that it wouldn't, but I haven't looked line item by line item at the budget to see if anything looks different.
They're both very
It's-
close. I
The
mean,
draft that I saw previously was
Yeah,
very
I think
similar.
that the only factors that are added is that we have a kosher component on the Taylor, which we did not have on the Nova.
That makes sense.
So everyone's good?
We okay?
Yeah.
Yes,
Alright, so I guess you'll have be able to meet with the planning development meeting today. And if there's anything that is required, you'll make sure Bill have that today, so he can complete his work.
Yeah, if there are additional requirements, I think that we've met everything at this point, but if Brian and Julie tell me that there's more required, I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, I think my guess is we probably have just about everything we need. I haven't reviewed every page of it, and after this meeting occurs, I think we'll have a better picture of whether there's anything new or different. I don't
Okay.
know that I expect it.
Okay.
But we'll have that conversation then, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't just move forward and be ready for the 15th.
So we are on for December 15th for Taylor, just to be clear.
I'm not on council, I can't commit, but yeah, I think from the law department's perspective, the intention is that there will be an agreement that would go into the packet with a piece of legislation next week
Terrific.
or the 15th.
Are you okay?
Yep.
First reading, right?
First reading, and again, what council does is
First reading for
council.
passage, couldn't we? Since we waited this long,
We'll leave that to my colleagues to decide.
Mr. Cobb,
I'm fine with doing it on a first reading.
thank you. All right,
I'm fine.
thank you. So, all
My
right.
thanks to council. Thank you, Vice Chair Russell, appreciate the meeting.
All right, thank you so very much. Make sure that the Planning and Development Committee has what you need and all of that. And I
Certainly.
appreciate that. And our committee has agreed to move it for passage. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, and technically the committee can recommend it for passage, council
Yes.
will have to decide.
Got it. Thank you, Councilman Cobb. Thank you, Councilwoman.
I'll be back.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a few minutes before we start on our zoning, so who plan development wanna come to the table?
Patty, what shared drive common conversation?
I don't know.
Because I have. But I think one of those good.
Mr. Porter is on.
You got all that, so if I put it in planning.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, who wants to speak today?
Alright, so. I just
Okay,
put
so
it-
why don't you come to the table if you plan on speaking?
Also plan on, as we
Can
discussed
you-
at the last meeting, on,
Come to the table, please.
yeah,
Mr. Novak, are you speaking today?
I don't know.
You don't know?
We'll see where we go.
Maybe.
Maybe? Maybe? Okay.
I might, as we discussed at our last meeting, we talked about some questions arose and SAG is not to discuss our positions, our ideas, our progress, all of those things for 3 years. And there's reasons for that. I will discuss them briefly, but I had suggested that we might share our up-to-date presentation brief on the screen because it involves graphics and it's something that I thought that you had agreed we could do today at this meeting. Otherwise, I'm not sure why we're here.
So I didn't agree to anything at that meeting. What I agreed to was having another meeting and us and people bringing specific questions to pose to Mr. Porter. And also that I was looking for a what I called it, a dimensions of a visual map, 3D map of like what do you call it, when you home improvement, you know how they do the oh my gosh, Mr. Cobb, help me out, you know I'm missing the
The renderings, a rendering, a 3D
a
rendering.
3D model where you could actually see it on the map of the buildings or how high the buildings could be or all that kind of. Because I gotta stay with the legislation we have. So if what you have, is it specific to the zoning?
Well, yes, it's very specific to it, but I think we made it clear on a number of occasions, including the last meeting, that we have some serious concerns about the zoning
Correct,
and about the process.
correct.
And we looked at the updates and we have comments on those. And we quite simply, we think that the idea of zoning is great, but why are we rushing it through? The zoning is not fully vetted as it should be. Engagement, I thought, was what this city was striving for. And that the vision is not clarified. The vision is extremely weak. And we want to demonstrate why those things exist. Our ultimate conclusion is that we shouldn't be rushing this through in December. We've explained that to council as best as we could. And if there's no interest in having those kinds of discussions, then I certainly don't have a purpose here today. So
No, we just wanted to make sure that, I believe, and Mr. Zamp, correct me if I'm wrong, we want, you over there, come on up to this table. We ask that we have specific questions or specific questions for Mr. Porter to say zone A or zone B or 2C is not what we're looking for because of this. Karen, could you help me with the specifics that we were looking for? As far as questions, I'm still gonna give you opportunity, but I wanted to make sure that everybody around the room that we're looking for specifics.
And I apologize, I'm not 100% certain that I understand what you're asking, but are you talking about the different sub zones that he has? So SO1, SO2, SO3, so in the map, there were different shades of purple, the dark, dark, medium, and those were the different subsections within the code. So the highest densest was the darkest purple, which was in the center of the map. And then surrounding it was a lighter shade.
Okay.
And then the very lightest shade is next to the single family zoning. And so the maximum height and the density requirements for that were less. So it's most intense in the center, and then as you moved out.
Right, so what I understood as from the plan and development, you were looking for specific questions at this meeting?
Well, Madam Chair, if
Go ahead.
it's okay, we have a presentation that I sort of teased last night at the
Okay.
council meeting.
Okay,
That I think can help maybe set the table
okay,
for
okay.
today, but yeah, obviously.
So let's do that, don't go anywhere, you're gonna have an opportunity, what do you think?
No, I was gonna say, well, to be fair, we don't have a 3D model of the present.
No, we don't.
Okay, so are we still able to hear what they're?
Give me a minute.
Okay.
These are, I'll reference those in a second, but I made some
You want
hard
these
copies
passed
of-
out?
Yeah, I only made 10 copies, I'm not sure who was gonna be here from council.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Director Zamp for their presentation. Then we're going to, I'm sorry. You have it. Did I give you mine?
Yeah, I got the 6 reasons.
He needs the one with the photo on it.
This one.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
So again, this was something that I sort of skimmed over last night because we didn't have a lot of time. But this presentation is here partially to help this committee, council, and the public at large understand a little bit more some of the bigger picture issues. And absolutely, as the chair is saying, that we want to get into the details. So just as a reminder, this is something that the mayor had suggested, putting this action, these 2 ordinances that are before you in context.
Okay.
So for the redevelopment of Simonstown Center, which dates back, the conversations date back years, but, the city looked at this in the master plan, SAG has been involved in this for 4 or 5 years, and even longer, people have been thinking about it. So it's something that the city's been working on for a long time. And the zoning, which is really important, is just one component of the things that need to happen. And so that's what this timeline in a general sense does. Ryan has a more specific version of this timeline, which he may be presenting today, but I just wanted to go over it again. So the zoning is the thing on the left. That's sort of the first element of the things that need to happen. Then there's the public financing framework, which again will involve council and the school district. How will incentives be baked in for developers and builders who wanna come here? Then there's all of the private side stuff that needs to happen, which is forecasted for 2026, with the hope of getting that first phase going by the end of the year, and then future phases going forward, 2026 and beyond. And I would just say here that pretty much no matter who is involved, take impact out of the picture, there's gonna have to be a similar frame. So there's gonna need to be zoning, financial framework, developing your site plans, getting those approvals, and that's gonna take some time. It's not gonna happen necessarily all at once.
When you say public financing framework and the council and the school district, what are you talking about
And
specifically?
So I'll let Ryan talk more about it, but there is a proposal to do what's called a new community authority. The Richmond Mall, Bell Oaks did this very thing, which is creating a sort of a new authority that handles the financing and the tax collection of a special district. It's authorized by state law. That's where my expertise in this ends. We'll let the lawyers talk about that, and that's, we've had our special counsel taking a look at this. It's the next step, but it's one that's not really even fully vetted yet. So it would be whatever local incentives we have, TIFs and CRA, those things that already exist and how those can apply to this site. And how do we make that so it works together with the zoning, so we're incentivizing the right things? Because the last thing we wanna do is develop zoning that says one thing and then developers can't do that because the incentives push them in a different direction.
Okay.
So that's why they sort of go together, but they're separate activities.
I don't wanna interrupt the presentation, but if the chair wants me to get deeper on that, I can.
No, not right at this time, thank you.
I mentioned this last night, but we know this is a really complicated thing and it's new. So we wanna make sure that people understand there are a lot of resources out there, each of these meetings have been videoed and posted, and so people can sit through if they have patience, they can sit through and listen and watch. There's a lot of good interactions on the city side and then from the public as well. And then we have a website where we're posting a lot of information, and I've handed out some information today that's not from the city that we're gonna be posting on that site, so people can again educate themselves. A lot of different meetings have been occurring and will be occurring. These are all listed here. I mentioned this last night, 11 meetings total between the planning commission, committee of council, and council itself. And I'll just say very clearly that we as the planning department have provided a roadmap here to do this in 2025. It doesn't mean that it has to happen in 2025. Ryan will beg to differ there, but our role is just to make an approval possible, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a must. Sometimes there's a must, but I just wanted to make it very clear. There needs to be more time. If politically, lowercase p, that's what the elected officials and the community determine, and that's what we need to do. So I wanted to spend a little time today walking through some of the bigger picture items because we haven't had a chance yet. We sort of jumped right into the zoning and a lot of the details, but for a lot of people, this is a new concept, and that's actually on purpose, right? All these codes are different on purpose, and so I'm gonna borrow from a bunch of different important resources out there that people can then go to themselves. And really that there are 4 big picture questions that we've heard in the various meetings and in our interactions. what's a form-based code? Why should we use this approach? And that may not be as big of a question as I'm making it out to be, but I think it's something that needs to be asked. Where's the vision? You know, that's something that is obviously on top of the mind. So what are the benefits of sort of taking this approach? So there used to be an organization called the Form-Based Codes Institute. It was absorbed by Smart Growth America. And so they spent a lot of time obviously on form-based codes, and I just want to read what their definition is. Form-based code is a land development regulation that fosters predictable, built results and a high-quality public realm by using physical form, in parentheses, rather than a separation of uses, as the organizing principle of the code. Form-based code is a regulation, not a mere guideline. Adopted into city, town, or county law, a form-based code offers a powerful alternative to conventional zoning regulation. And so that last sentence is important because it is purposely different than the way that we've done things for the past 75 years. And so they've got this graphic that I think really paints a picture. You guys are talking about seeing things. So conventional zoning says we don't really care what the building looks like. We just worry about what's inside of it. So this is what you get. You get a building that can be whatever it is. And we're just worried, is that a warehouse? Is that a residential use? Is that a restaurant? Now there's a better approach than that, and that's zoning with design guidelines. The design guidelines say, hey, let's focus on the architecture and make sure that the outside of that structure looks good and fits contextually and interacts with the neighborhood. And that's better, absolutely better. And many communities take that approach. What form-based codes do, though, is you see it's the sort of full approach, which is our places are not just buildings, they're buildings and streets and open spaces and trees. And so form-based codes regulate all of that. So I just want to take you through it again. This is what our code, particularly in Severance, gets us today. Design guidelines get us something a little bit better, and a form-based code gets us in this direction. So I'm saying that on purpose because we truly believe, the planning department believe that the form-based code approach is the direction that we want to take. It's the way that we're taking our code in general. It's the way that the city of Cleveland has decided to go by adopting the form-based code, and so many communities around this country have taken this approach. Okay, where's the vision? So I want to remind folks that there actually is a vision, and I'll give Larry credit because I think he mentioned this in a meeting somewhat recently, that the Board of Control spent a lot of time in 2022 and 2023 coming up with a vision statement. It's a statement, and it is posted on the website. And down here, you'll see there's a comment section because we had the community provide input or provide comments on that vision statement. And you can download all 186 comments. And they're all over the place. They were really good. Some were more specific than others. But we did get some like this one that I've highlighted here, which is, please move from vision to action. So there was, and I think a segment of the population that really wants to sort of get out of this visioning phase and get into the implementation. And one thing we've asked Ryan to do, and this comes to your point of visualization, is really take that paper document and move it into something that we can all relate to. And in reality, what is the vision? The big part of this vision is Crocker Park. So I've got two images here of Crocker Park, which is one of the really great recent developments in the metro area. And Ryan will talk about how that is a lot of what he's trying to accomplish here. So just for folks as reference, think Crocker Park as we're trying to develop this. What are the benefits? So there's a lot of benefits for form-based codes, and I don't need to be the one to tell you that, but I want to have the AARP tell you that. So one of the handouts I gave you is a 4-pager that's in form-based code. If you turn to the second page, the AARP tries to answer, it's two-sided, so tries to answer some of the biggest concerns that are out there. And I need to move Ryan here, so. So one thing we've heard from a lot of folks is form-based codes are too restrictive and disregard the market. So there's a concern out there that this code will actually depress the opportunities for what can happen. I don't wanna read the whole thing today, but Archie goes through that and talks about why it doesn't actually do that. It actually helps the market, it helps streamline and make the process predictable, which is what the development community is looking for. Hybrid or rezoning is better, right? This is sort of going to why take this approach. Read it for yourselves. The ARP talks about why a form-based code is the right way to go. And last one, developers will resist the form-based code. We know that that's often a problem with our zoning codes, but when the codes reflect the vision of the community, and that's an important thing, and they are predictable, then developers really can be supportive of these things. There's a second handout that I gave you. 6 reasons your city needs a form-based code. That's from Strong Towns. I encourage you to read it. We're not going to go over that today. And then the last resource I just wanted to highlight is a report from Form-Based Codes Institute and Smart Growth America, which is talking about the economic benefits of form-based codes. And there were 2 data points that they did with all their research, which was places with form-based codes experienced about half the increase, half the increase in rents compared to conventional rents. And then places with form-based codes generated $65 million more. So there have been extensive studies on why form-based codes are really economic drivers. And so we wanted to make sure that we were addressing that because there are the concerns out there of why take this approach. I'm not going to go through all of this. This will be a resource that we can provide, but this is Form-Based Codes Institute's introduction to form-based codes, and they walk through, why did these things come about? They're a response to half-century urban development, which was really people reacting to the Industrial Revolution and really toxic uses out there and trying to keep those uses apart from each other. But as we went to a post-industrial world, those types of separations became less desirable and important. But the problem is that our standard zoning focuses on people behind the car and driving. And you can see that from the way we built things. And so this is a great example of seasonal parking and large roads that are there to accommodate a lot of cars coming. And that's why a lot of Americans doesn't look like this, but it looks like that. And you can see in the patterns of the way that America has developed with cul-de-sacs and subdivisions, you have to have a car. Whereas, and this is a sort of a roadway network hierarchy, where everything takes you from a large road to a smaller road to an even smaller road. The pedestrian is never considered that. So this is part of the reason why the street standards or the street component is so important to the form-based code, because it's not just about buildings, it's not just about uses, it's about that whole environment. And so what form-based codes traditionally have are some very specific components, which you'll see in this form-based code. Building form standards, public space standards, and regulating plans. They're called different things, right? So building form standards are what should the buildings look like, and how tall are they? What's the step back? And your build to line. Public space standards, those are the civic standards that are in the code. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on this and share this information, but this is for 20 and 30 years how form-based codes have been approaching this problem of suburban sprawl. Just to skip ahead, lastly, so by putting all the important decisions about urban form in simple regulations, simple I guess is a relative term, form-based codes cut through red tape into an attractive review process, and that's an important thing that I want to address in a second. This is dated, a dated presentation, but you can see that in 2011, there was this exponential increase of communities that were actually adopting this, upwards of 150 communities, and it's much more now, 14 years later. And here's just some testimonials from various mayors, including for vice mayors, including Vice Mayor then calls of the city of Cincinnati, which really thought that it was really important for them to adopt it before this code. Okay. So now coming back to our part of the presentation, something we've said in a couple of meetings, the more specific that people can be about this code, the better. And Karen gave this range of types of comments last time, but just it can range from, I don't support the zoning at all, which is a comment, but not all that helpful in making it any better, to, hey, I would like to see on page 3, sub-item number 3, this change from X to Y. That's something that's really, really helpful. And a couple of things that I think we've been hearing in the past couple of meetings is the changes or the shifts in the city review of severance. So I want to talk about that. The protection of natural resources, and I'm gonna have Karen talk about that. Civic and green spaces. We want to have Ryan talk about that. Although I think Larry alluded to where we were going that last night. Council President Larson has provided us a bunch of questions, which Ryan, I'd like you to address. Barracuda has provided a bunch of questions, which Ryan, I'd like you to address. And then Karen, there's a bunch of planning commission questions that we've gotten since the planning commission meeting, which we're working collaboratively with Ryan on. And so we can, I guess I'll defer this back to the chair. We can get specific into any of these or not. Let me hold that there for a second. I just want to finish up that, again, we've got a website with a lot of information. People should feel free to share their comments with us directly. I think that's it. So just going back here, we can spend some time on this now, or we can open it up. I leave it to you, but we do have comments to make on all of these things.
Okay, so why don't you be very brief? I would like to get to Council President Larson's questions as well as Mayor Kuda's questions and the Planning Commission's questions, so that those can be answered so that we can all hear them. But the other ones, if you could be very brief on that, because I do want to give Mr. Volpe and everyone else around the room opportunity to speak as well.
So yeah, very briefly, city review oversight. So one of the proposed changes that's resulting from this proposal is to remove the board. The board control is a construct of the 1950s and 1960s of special board that was dedicated only to severance. It includes the mayor, chair of the P&D committee, the chair of the planning commission, and the board of zoning appeals chair. And it's
Council President.
And the council president, yes, thank you. And it is for years, for 50 years, has functioned on an as needed basis. And so we recently, and Karen can speak to this better, we recently ran into some difficulties in getting that group together.
Yeah.
And I would speak, to the civics people watching and in the audience, but when you have a board that meets ad hoc or occasionally, that's unpredictable and people have a hard time paying attention to it. There's a reason why people show up to the council meetings, because they know what it is, they know how it functions. And so we have a body in the city, which is called the Planning Commission, which meets every month, and they deal with zoning and planning for every other part of the city, except for severance. And so one of the changes that we have recommended, and this is coming from the city staff, is to remove that board control and put that review back in the hands of the Planning Commission. What this code does, a little bit more than exists in our code today, is give some oversight authority to what's called the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator is a very common position or role throughout the United States. Somebody needs to administer a zoning code, and it's typically a planning director and or their designee, which in my case is my assistant director and my zoning inspector and my planner, so we're all the zoning administrator. This power has been and this role has been in our code for probably 50 years. And that includes things like the planning commission doesn't have to review chicken coops because they saw too many of them at one point in time and they realized they really had no input, so that approval of a chicken coop permit, special permit, comes through the zoning. So this code for severance just sort of highlights that. There are some additional roles or responsibilities that the zoning administrator has, but it's not really all that different than what we already do in our code.
President Larson.
When you talk about the overlay, I have heard that current property owners have the option to opt out of the overlay. Would you still need a board of control for those that opt out?
So let me say it differently. You have the ability to opt in.
Okay.
Everybody is under the existing S1 zoning.
Right.
And you can opt into the SOZ zone. If you remain in the S1, what we're proposing is that you do not go to a board of control, but that you go to the planning commission, because once again, the planning commission does this type of work. They actually get everything that goes through the board of control anyway. They provide a recommendation and it comes back to the board of control. It's actually created an extra step that's not necessary. And so whether you're in the overlay or not, we're proposing to go with that.
Thank you.
Just to comment on that, I think that's a great ideal. I know Mayor Kuda and I have served on a couple of those meetings and we could not go forward because of different circumstances and Spectrum and a couple other people had to wait, and so it was very difficult. And that's where we came up with the mayor or designee, remember? Yeah, so no, I think it's a great idea.
She's a question.
Hold on one second. Okay.
Alright, I don't understand what's just been said. Because the existing code calls for board of control. I don't care about board of control. Because then it has to go to planning commission and council. Council has the ultimate authority. And everything that goes through that process has to be based on a comprehensive detailed plan. The proposed code eliminates the need for any kind of plan and creates this completely undefined committee or commission, the technical advisory commission or committee. And then it goes to planning. But my reading of the new code or the proposed code is it's primarily these reviews are primarily to determine whether the project, which is one piece of the overall development, complies with this new code section, period.
So if I could just clarify a couple things that you said. So just like we have in other districts and other special districts, our S2 district, the council gets involved. Number one on zoning, if there are any changes in zoning, and then number two, what's called the development plan. So for example, with Park Synagogue, there was a development plan that was developed that got approved by council. That was this general plan, concept plan, let's say, level for that site. And so long as a project comes back that is within the boundaries of that development and concept plan, it doesn't ever have to go back to council. That process or that procedure is being mirrored here. We're trying to make it so that both really the entire city is treated the same way. So the concept plan for S1 district is the preliminary land use plan. That's something that's been adopted, that exists, that's the concept plan, and that's how the board of control has had to treat everything that comes through severance. And so this regulating plan that's in this code would be considered the development plan for the SOZ district. So just like Park Synagogue has its development plan, the S1 has its plan, and the SOZ has its plan. The technical advisory committee is simply that, it's a pre-development committee made up of the planning department, the fire chief, the police chief, public works, a member of council, a member of the planning commission, to sit in on those initial discussions with developers to say, hey, this is a good idea, this isn't a good idea. So before they're ever getting to submit a full application, that group of people is providing advice. They don't provide.
Kind of like the tag group.
Right.
I tried
But
to
they don't,
establish.
they don't provide any approval. Now, one could argue that if they say, hey, this is a no-go, that's sort of a tacit no-go. But really, Ms. Winter is 100% correct that the limitation, which by the way exists today throughout our code, of if somebody proposes something that's been through the TAC and meets the code, when it gets to the planning commission has the ability to comment upon it and have some conditions, but they really shouldn't be able to, I'm not gonna say can't, but shouldn't be able to deny it, because it will have met the code, it will have met purpose. And that's how we treat everything now. So if somebody proposes something that is code conforming, planning commission can make an addition, hey, move your dumpster here to there, I don't like the way that that playground looks. But what they can't do is say, oh, you have 45 units, no, I think it should only be 22 units. That the planning commission can't do if it's a code conforming project, even today.
I'm sorry to keep pushing this, but I wanna know why anyone in the city would want to relinquish the oversight that's provided in the current S1 zoning. It doesn't call for a concept plan. It calls for an overall plan. We're talking about a unique property in Cleveland Heights. It's 47 acres under one ownership right now. Everyone here is committed to seeing it, I think, developed as a comprehensive development.
I guess
The current zoning says before any approvals can be granted, the city has to approve an overall, not concept plan, detailed development plan with architectural drawings, with landscaping, with lighting, everything drawn out to scale. And the new proposal calls for a concept plan for an individual piece within the overall Severance property.
Okay, so I want to interrupt one moment here. First of all, we're talking about the removal of the Board of Controls, correct?
That's one aspect of what we're talking
Okay, the aspect that she's talking about is concerning the Board of Control?
about. Well, I think she said she doesn't really
City
care.
Council.
Right, okay, so let's get back to you. Cause I want to get him through this piece first and then go to the questions.
Okay, protection of natural
Yes.
resources. And again, these are big topics we should spend
Just
time.
very,
Yeah.
just
Karen, can you speak to protection of natural resources?
So in the plan, there's buffer areas that have been
Oh,
drawn
yeah.
over the plan. And those are really intended to make sure that that conservation area that circles around the edges of Severance, that abuts the single family homes remain. So those that are absolutely preserved as they are, as buffer zones. They cannot be developed. There's no development that can occur there.
And so let's get this question out there for Ryan to respond to, not now, but we've had discussions about, so what occurs on the current regulating plan image is the 150-foot buffer that exists today in the S1 zone. But we've had discussions about extending that even further. So creating a better situation, a more protected situation under the new zoning than the existing zoning. Let's hold off on that.
Okay, so let's go to the
Yeah.
next one.
Civic and green spaces, obviously this is a really big component of what a lot of folks in SAG are really calling for, and it's something that we've had discussions about. One of the things that we've suggested, and I believe Ryan agrees to, is that while the streets are something that's really important to this form-based code, and setting those streets are part of this proposal, that green spaces, civic spaces, and associated infrastructure would be exempt from those streets. So that would allow the conglomeration of multiple blocks to create, if it's possible, to create a large civic space that some people, many people are envisioning for the site. So we think with that addition, that should hopefully help allay the concerns, some of the concerns of folks that are, really clamoring for that large green space. So that's the three sort of bigger topic areas that I know we've heard about. And then I think we could go to councilors.
Yes,
Oh, Council President.
her questions. Did you have them in writing or something, or I was assuming that she had already presented them and someone has have answered her?
Yeah, and so in the last three, we've been over all of these with Ryan, and he may be the best person to go through that. Ryan, I don't know
Yes,
if-
that's what,
if
yeah,
your intention was to sort of go through comments and because he's responding to each and every one.
yes. So Ryan, you're on to the questions that President Larson asked you, as well as the questions that Mayor Kuda asked you, as well as the Planning Commission. If you can give us your answers to those, we'd appreciate it. We hear the questions too. Can you, I don't know if you have the questions in front of you as well?
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't know that was the agenda for today, so I wasn't prepared for that, but I could just literally go to the emails that we've been going back and forth on.
That'd be
Like, bring
fine.
up the document that we've been working on that consolidates all the questions.
That'd be fine.
Yeah. Let's see. I just need to be able to share my screen. Doing this on the fly. So help me out here, Council President Larson. I think we addressed your question about the zoning administrator, right? Or
Yes.
already addressed that.
Yes.
It says stop sharing. Oh, okay. Never mind.
For new questions. This is, there was a question about the Board of Control and losing control. So I can address that. I think that kind of addresses what Jen is talking about also. I think this actually came from Jen. So you had forwarded a question from Jen about Board of Control stuff. So to be clear, I mean, I think I've been saying this literally for 2 years, and people may disagree with this, but one of the main tenets of what I'm proposing is to expedite approval processes and create less red tape for development. And, I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and I've done it very successfully in 4+ communities. This is the 5th, where we've implemented these zoning codes where the rules are laid out up front, right? And because those rules are laid out up front, everybody knows what they have to do up front if you're a developer, sponsor, investor.
Excuse
right?
me, excuse me.
And if you meet.
Excuse me, Ryan, I don't mean to interrupt you, but could you actually read her question and then give us what the answer is?
All right, this said, please address the concerns that Ms. Winkner has regarding the city losing control of any development at Severance if the Board of Control is no longer a factor. So I think Eric kind of addressed this, that we've set up a process whereby the applicant comes in, they submit a proposal to the TAC. The TAC, which is made up, and I think one of Jen's concerns is that she didn't understand who was on the TAC, and that I think we mentioned this in the planning commission meeting or in the last planning development meeting, but that there was an oversight when we submitted the first draft of the zoning code that didn't include the TAC members, but there are very specific members of the TAC that Eric just rattled off. So the TAC will review the plans. They will have a very specific timeline to review the plans. They will provide comments to the applicant as to their concerns about the plans. The applicant then has an opportunity to go back and resubmit those plans to the TAC for a second review. Once the second review is complete, and then the applicant submits the plan to the Planning Commission and the ARB. The ARB can make comments to the Planning Commission that they can take into consideration. And then the Planning Commission's job, along with staff, is to review the site plan submission and concept plan submission, and there are very specifics in the site plan submission actually, so I don't have them in front of me, but they're literally outlined. They are very similar to the site plan submission requirements that exist today. And once that site plan is submitted, then the planning commission and the staff review the site plan to make sure it's in conformance with the zoning code. And if it's in conformance with the zoning code, then as Eric said, there is no kind of random denial. They can put conditions on it, but there's no random denial available. And that is what actually creates this kind of 120-day targeted approval timeline for a development plan. And again, I'll just repeat that like the intent of this process is to set these rules up front. They're very, very specific, such that there's no guessing later, and that if plans adhere to the code, then they should expect an approval so that we can get things going. And I'll just say in general, I think, we're trying to get away from what the code on the S1 calls for now, because clearly hasn't led to any development, right? And that's not unique for most of the places that I end up working in that switch to a form-based zoning code. Is that their Euclidean underlying zoning isn't development. So I hope that provides an explanation of my perspective.
Okay, next question.
Okay, this says, I am forwarding you Ms. Wigner's concerns regarding severance and who is responsible for the infrastructure, if not the developer. So I think how I respond to this, but the infrastructure responsibility is the developer on site. So within the circle, the infrastructure responsibility right now is the city's responsibility for Severn Circle. Severn Circle is owned by the city. The rest of the site will be privately owned unless the city is willing to take dedication of the public streets, right, that are created as part of this, which, in every development, developers try to shed ownership of public space and or streets, but the city has no obligation to take ownership of those. So that would have to be worked out as a deal at that time. That would not be something that you put into a zoning code normally. So a developer would make a proposal. They would be required to build the street as in accordance with the code as it's designed. And then the discussion would then commence at that point between the developer and the city as to whether the city is willing to take over ownership and the maintenance of that space.
Thank you. Ryan, how many questions are there?
There are honestly dozens and dozens.
Okay, so we're not gonna have time to go through dozens and dozens of them.
Yeah, I mean, I have this entire, just to be clear with everybody, we have this entire document that I've been working through with Eric that has general comments, it has planning board chair comments, and all these red are, how we're dealing with them. We have Chris Brace and the transportation committee comments and changes that are being made. Larry, newly elected councilmember Joe has some ideas. Mayor Kudo's stuff. So, and I've responded to most of this stuff in writing already. To all the people that have had the questions, and literally most of these questions.
Could you just because Mayor Kudos is on the bottom of your page, would you mind just reading his it's hard to see comments, is there comments? Does that say Kuda comments?
These are my shorthand of his comments.
Okay, could you just give us those and then we're gonna pivot?
Sure. So Mayor Kuda asked me to connect the community feedback that I heard over the 18-month period to the zoning. So I sent to council yesterday both a memo on that and a full presentation that I welcome the council and everybody to just publish on the website, which literally connects all the feedback we received over the 18-month period and stuff we got off of Future Heights and survey process before we were even down. And it connects each one of those types of themes to specific reference sections in the code as to how we're adhering to those desires and creating those opportunities. So it's very specific. I would encourage you to read it. And Mayor, please jump in there where you can. explain resi uses and connect to housing study. I think I outlined for you in a response email, the connection between the the market study and the housing uses. And you had asked specifically whether I believe the code regulates whether it's a for sale product or a rental product. And I think my response to you was that zoning codes don't normally regulate ownership or rental. So our code doesn't do that.
And I would just interject that that balance is gonna be very important to the city and, you know, and certainly council has a concern about rental property versus home ownership.
Sure. I mean, I think Bill might be in the room, but you can talk about the legality of regulating that stuff. I don't think that you can force people to be build home ownership versus rental. That being said, it's really important to me. Like I think I said to everyone on this call on multiple occasions that my vision of a first mini kind of 1A phase, which is like basically the size of Van Aken for this project, would be a combination of multifamily for rent, multifamily for sale, townhomes. I would be looking for, you know, some sort of affordability component to the initial phases. So like we had that kind of thought of like a 4 to 6 building phase that would include multiple players that have different typologies and ownership versus rental. Ownership is super important to everybody, but I can't dictate whether the market supports, you know, home ownership or an office building, right? The market
Open it up,
dictate.
you'll see planning, zoning.
Okay, thank you. I think Director Zamp had something to say.
Yeah, so this was not my intention when we started out today, but I think it's actually providing a good lesson that there are a lot of really good comments that we have received, and we're working collaboratively with those with.
Well, hold on. We got a lot of people speaking. Excuse us, Karen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we to date have received a lot of really good comments, as Ryan highlighted today. And we're working collaboratively with them. So, you know, they're saying, hey, Ryan, here's a comment we received. You know, can you look at it, react to it, let's discuss it. And our intention is to, like we did previously, do a list of comments and the response. And I think what you'll find is that most of the comments received will be received positively, meaning that a change or that comment will have been reflected in a revised version of the code. So I'm saying this intentionally because I think the process is working really well, and our intention is that should there be more, I mean, we're always going to be receiving comments however long this period goes for, but the intention is to get you prior to which may or may not be the last time you that compiled list, so that you guys can see, and it's going to be pretty lengthy, you know, all of the comments that people had and how those were addressed. And then coming out of that, a final version of the code can be created that reflects those comments.
Okay.
So again, it's a reiteration to folks that if they can provide really specific comments, there's a really good chance that that's going to be reflected in the version of the code.
Okay. Thank you. So Ryan, if you could just pause for a moment. I'm going to turn it over to SAG, and how long do you think you're
2 days. As long as it takes. I'm gonna go as fast as I can. We have one shot to do this. We've been turned down by the chair of the planning commission. She said, this is all about zoning. And I know you wanna talk about plans and forms and and visions. And so we're not gonna allow you to present. You can't talk about something so important in 3 minutes or 2 minutes as it was last night. at a council meeting, this is our last shot, okay? So if I talk too long, then just tell me to leave and I'll leave, okay? I respect that, but it's that important, you understand, it's that important. We live here. That's why I started with this slide. See, Ryan, with all due respect, you're a hell of a salesman. But you ain't from Cleveland Heights, you ain't from
Okay,
Cleveland,
wait,
okay?
hold on,
And you
hold
need-
on.
No, and you need to understand that there is passion
No,
and
but
there's
wait,
tremendous motivation here.
give me
okay?
1 minute, please.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a minute,
Give me a
but I
minute.
need that minute.
Okay, so, what, yeah, you may need that minute, but I may have to cut you off for a minute because
It's
I
okay,
just need you to know that you will have 20 minutes
okay?
and be as precise as you can, only because I have a job. And we all know that, so I wanna make sure I get everybody in and people who are around the table who would like to speak or
That's
comment,
fine.
okay?
All right.
So,
I'll skip through stuff and I'll go do
Mr.
the best I
Volpe,
can.
Mr. Volpe,
All right,
you are
guys.
now on, time's on.
All right. I'm gonna say what comes out as it comes out, but first of all, understand the five of us that are here, Larry, Jen, Harriet, Dennis isn't here, and Bob Brown has been a part of this. We're all part of SAG. We've been on it since Larry formed it, and we'll see that. And we feel a responsibility to do what we've been doing, and it's because of what I'm gonna show you now. And it's particularly important because of what's going on now, okay? And how many of you know about this? 2017, the city manager hired this group. This was really wonderful work that nobody knew about. Nobody knew about it. I had to do a public records request to get this because the city manager wouldn't give it to us, okay? And if you read on the right, it says all the right things: reposition, rebrand, experience-oriented retail, residential anchor, mixed use, central public park space, okay? Boy, that's a real foundation for some planning. That inspired me after that came out, and we got a copy of it, to do some planning on my own. And I did this in 2018 in concert with Future Heights. And it was all about looking at options and alternatives for Severance. I am an architect and an urban designer and a developer. I understand how all these pieces and parts go together. I do them. And I'm also a very good designer. And I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but the bottom line is I had the skills to sit up
Don't waste your minutes.
2:00, I'm not, but it's important till 2:00 in the morning to look at this stuff and share it with my collaborators here. 2 months after we were begging, the city has to learn from this. And if I don't get past this first part, I'm happy. But our city thinks very linearly, okay? And we don't communicate well. We had a city manager at the time. She wouldn't talk to us. 2 months after Tim Boland saw the work that we were doing at SAG, an RFP is out on the street looking for a planning firm to put together a plan for Severance. Here it is, $223,000 of planning with no vision, no direction, horrible RFP, okay? Linear thinking. Larry formed Severance Action Group in we killed that, okay? It would have been a good idea if it was packaged properly, and it would have helped promote what we're doing today about 5 years earlier. We lost a lot of time. Larry forms this in 2021. We start planning on our own. Nobody else was. We had you-know-who as our mayor. He wouldn't meet with us, wouldn't talk to us. I want to correct something that was said before. This vision statement was actually written by SAG. The original draft, which was very similar to this, was written by us. We presented it to the mayor. He took it, did whatever he did with his board of control, changed some words, added some things, whatever. I can show you the difference. We got no credit for it. We didn't take credit for it. But what I'm saying is we got the discussion going, and we also produced our own plan, okay? This is what we call a conceptual development plan. I don't know what Ryan calls his. I'm having trouble finding a name on the drawing. But for us, this was a conceptual development plan. And the amount of detail it shows was representative of form-based planning, which leads to form-based zoning, which was created by the Congress of New Urbanism probably 2 decades ago. And they suggested that there are certain ways we plan today that are urban in nature, they involve comprehensive thinking, and they lead to such tools as form-based zoning. And it is a tool, okay? It is not a vision. You can't describe vision in words, okay? Our vision statement was a vision statement, but it wasn't a vision plan and it wasn't a vision, okay? Davida, you asked for, can you show us this in 3 dimensions? The answer is absolutely yes. And I'm going to show you some examples of form-based planning in 3 dimensions in the early stage. Those kinds of things follow this, but we don't have this. We have a hodgepodge of orange buildings that sit on a site. Incidentally, we also came up with development initiatives. How do you get this done? Okay, I know Ryan has his way of doing things. I think though that we are a municipality, we need to think seriously about how we want to see this done because we're stakeholders here. We own the road, we own property, and we have the greatest concern for what gets done. So here we are today with the zoning. You're looking at the 2 plans side by side. Other than colors and some things that pop out, you probably can't tell the big difference. They're both at about a 45-degree angle, the roads. The Circle Drive doesn't look different, but it is. Our Circle Drive is actually a bit different. Don't have time to get into that. Ours has a 5-acre park in the center. The connection to City Hall, that axial connection, is very different in the plan on the left than the right. The one on the right puts that diamond-shaped, you can't call it a roundabout because it won't function like one. Ours is a true roundabout with yields rather than stop signs or traffic lights. That one is actually sitting in the middle of our City Hall parking lot. And then it runs back across a large linear parking lot that frames the brunt of the retail that we'll be lucky to get. That ain't no Crocker Park. And let me be honest with you. Crocker Park is about the worst example of what I want this place to be and look like. Crocker Park is a fabricated new town. It is an island. It's full of lovely high rent retail. I've been there once. I'll never go there again. And I can afford to go there, okay? That's not my Cleveland Heights, okay? We need to think about this, but that's part of vision planning. Also, our buildings are in different colors, different sizes, different shapes that represent real configurations of real uses that would fit on this site. We talked a lot about the red, research and development. We talked about the yellow, which is for sale housing. It's specifically designed to be that. This plan, based on the configuration, is 65% for sale housing. It must be that for this to work. And the rest of it is rental property, which includes senior housing, which of course is always rental. This plan has a food court, a community plaza, and it respects the fact that Dave's grocery store is here. That's the blue box, the upper blue box. The other plan on the right puts a park where Dave's Market is. That's never gonna happen. All that density there, that's not gonna happen. Why are we showing it? Why are we looking at it? That's not form-based planning. Form-based zoning is about looking at forms that provide the framework for the zoning that guides the redevelopment, that encourages the redevelopment. The difference between it and a traditional zoning is traditional zoning tries to regulate it, and you can't regulate good design. Good design comes from good designers. Good zoning comes from creative thinking emanating from solid planning. The block arrangements here, I've only talked for 6 minutes. The block arrangement here is very well thought out, okay? I'm gonna need a big bottle of wine with my lunch when we're done. The block arrangement here, these blocks are between 300, 250 to 400 feet long. That is the perfect walking distance for urban city blocks. The amount of infrastructure that's here is laid out in a way that we could afford to get the money to build it, and I'll talk about that later, and that we can create blocks that accommodate the kind of things we want to build, not vice versa. Let's lay out the block and see what fits, and let the developer tell us how he wants to cram it in, and it ain't gonna work. This street pattern, interestingly enough, is very similar to the one that SAG developed, okay? Ours was here, you know, Ryan, we shared it with you. We're glad, but it's also very different, particularly Hamburger Boulevard is very different. And there's more infrastructure here, roads here than is necessary. And the type of roads, I wish I could get into it, but the proposed construction of the roads that is in the zoning code is inappropriate. The design of the road should come directly out of the city. They should not be guided by zoning, in my opinion. They should be designed by the transportation professionals that the city engages, by the planning department, and by the safety and operational regulations that are managed by the city and the county. There's no state because nothing's a state road here. I don't understand why all that's in the zoning code. If you lay our SAG plan, which is the gray, on top of the impact plan, you can see that they're similar, but they're very different. The utilization of land and property in our plan is designed to optimize the kind of development that can happen here. To propose areas where different land uses occur, and that shows on our block drawing, but not to mandate every aspect of it. And that's what comes out of this, and I'm gonna show you examples. When I look at this, when we looked at it and talked about it, we saw a lot of buildings crammed on the property, big parking lots with 250-foot long stretches along a sidewalk open to the streets. That's not a walkable environment. And most of the buildings are 60-foot depths, which is an apartment building depth. Could be a condo, but it's not the kind of condos we're thinking about. And they line the ring road. We don't think the ring road is the center of life in this new neighborhood. We think the park was our idea to be the center of life, combined with the retail and a rich mixture of uses and forms that make it exciting. Who's gonna live here? Okay, you know, the industry is gonna tell you that our country is getting older, our city's getting older. Look at me and Larry here, okay? And then we got the millennials that live our downtown now has 23,000 people, mostly young. Those people are gonna get married, have kids, and skip over Cleveland Heights and head to God knows where they can find housing that they want. Now, a lot of them are gonna come here, a lot of them understand rehabilitation. My nephew just rehabbed a home in Cleveland Heights. He's in the process of it. I'm doing it with him. I'm his godfather. But the bottom line is that to do this right, we must stick with our roots, which, you know, it takes a village, okay? That is a philosophy in the new urbanist mindset of the way we plan, the way we cluster uses and buildings and all that, all the stuff that Eric said is very true. And we just want to use it to enhance our city. And this is just a demonstration of what I just said about the cluster of older adults, 55 and over, and younger adults, 20 to 34. are the brunt of our population in this city, and we need to accommodate them because we're not doing that now. As I said, the blocks are designed to fit housing, and we have some very special forms. Again, I'm an architect, that we think we can find developers that would love to do what's being proposed, because we can show them ways, and this is how I've operated in the past, both as a city architect and as an architect in private practice who's built thousands of housing units, show people how to do what they've never done before, especially for our city. As you can see on the right, I'm not gonna read this, there is a mixture of townhomes and flats, what I call quad lofts, different kinds of multifamily buildings, senior housing. That's what we're after, is the diversity, not just in form, but in price points. We're talking about economic diversity, okay? We want people of very different means to be able to afford to live here with each other. We've done it before, we can do it here. In fact, this is a perfect place to do it, because this is sort of the nexus of our community. The architecture is not a big scale. These wouldn't be tall buildings. 3- and 4-story buildings would be the predominant model, and then the one on the top is a taller, it's a 6-story building. We might have some buildings that are 5 or 6 stories, okay? And that can affect the count. But the bottom line is that this plan in the buildable areas shows between 500, and these are to scale, between 550 and 750 housing units. The plan, the study that was done, I showed you in the early beginning, said that the most Severance could absorb was, I think, 860 housing units. So we're right in the zone of achieving what the pros have told us is feasible. We're not assuming we're gonna tear Dave's town and build housing there, okay? We're presuming that that's gonna remain a commercial district, and we're not gonna add thousands and thousands of square feet of new retail. We're gonna add a modest 35,000 square feet along the road, plus a market hall, which I'll get to in a minute. One of the things that we feel strongly about is what you see in red, that with a hospital and our connections to the medical industry, that we have the opportunity on this site, which will be fabulous when it's done, for medical research and development and educational purposes. Larry's been touching the bases like you can't believe. And we're excited and we're optimistic about it. And for this to be a truly mixed-use community, and to have folks here in the day as well as in the evening when they come home from work to their homes, we need to have commerce. We need to have more office space, and we believe that that is doable and fillable. The last segment is parking. There's no parking lots on this plan other than the existing ones for Dave and Home Depot, which are shielded by their buildings. I believe that small parking garages, and that's what these are 2 or 3 levels, depending on what they serve. And there is plentiful parking to make what I'm showing on this plan work, that can be spread around the site in a way that they're accessible. In fact, the maximum distance from anybody's house to their car space is 400 feet. You can see the distances between those garages are very close. The townhouses all have their own garages. The bottom line is affordably, we can do indoor parking that's proximate, that's safe, and it's concealed. There's no reason to see cars other than cars on the street. The public realm is critical. The zoning code talks about, I think, civic spaces. Is that correct? It has a section on, or civic.
With no definition.
With no definition. Well, the civic realm is how we consider it, and how the urban design industry considers it. And it's all the elements and the way they're configured, as Eric said, way they're placed on the site is what makes place. And if you see here, we've got a list of 15 things that are amenities. that are things that should be in the code, that should be on the plan, that should be a part of the vision that makes this place work. Everything from how streets are landscaped, how they're sized and shapes, the kind of diversity of uses that can occur in a 5-acre park. I'll talk about that in a minute. The idea to have outdoor performing space and a food court. These are things that really matter. 3 dimensions. These are drawings that I did of what the park and the community could look like and feel like. One of the things about something like this is there is a sense of openness that one doesn't find in older established urban communities. And this is a place for people to come to. This is just a comparison. On the left is the axial relationship between City Hall, which is our civic building. It's a part of that public realm. Okay, it's a public place that might expand as this grows. Right now, you have to walk through a parking lot. You got to cross the road. You got to go through leftover green space, cross another road, and you bump into the rear end of the shopping mall. Our plan proposes to locate something that will calm traffic, which is what roundabouts do, to the side of City Hall with a direct linear connection across our park, our retail, a fountain. That's where the fountain would go. It leads to the community plaza where the food court is, and ultimately it goes between the institutional buildings to the hospital. If you look to the right, you see what I was talking about before, which is what the impact plan shows, which I find respectfully counterproductive. We've been asked before, what do you need a 5-acre park for? Could be smaller. Okay, yeah, it could be. You can see Perk Plaza is actually 1.2 acres, but it's surrounded by multiple large public parks, Public Square, the mall, the stuff that we've done on 12th Street, all over. But if you look at parks in neighborhoods, not downtowns, Lincoln Park in Cleveland, which is the oldest, is 7.6 acres. It's a true town square. Mill Creek Park, which is a new development that I did back in the 90s, has 5 acres of parks, and it's surrounded by all new housing planned in a form-based style, a new urbanist style. That's the one in the lower right. And then Scoville Park in Oak Park, which is one of my favorite suburbs of Chicago, very much like Cleveland Heights, has a magnificent 6.4 acre park. Yeah, we're right in the realm of what we need. So now let's just get to the weeds and how this relates to the zoning. The zoning needs to respond to the things that the plan calls for, and we need to develop that. But we also have this unusual relationship with a property owner that we haven't been able to work with, a new developer who's trying to make it work.
3 minutes.
Pardon me?
You're almost out of time.
Running out of time. Oh, okay. All right. Look, we are concerned that the way this is set up, the shopping mall could stay, the road could stay as it is. Ryan's thing, you can't read it in the upper right, says maybe by this summer, construction could start. Well, it has to start without any new roads. It has to start, there's no time or money to build the roads, to tear the mall down. So the only places you can build are along the existing ring road. And this is what we might end up with for a long period of time. It scares us to death, honestly, that we would end up with something like this when we should have and plan for the whole banana, okay? It
1
needs
minute.
Oh, boy, you are rough. Okay. All right, so you get it. I'm gonna end with 3 projects, okay? I gotta end by saying, is what Volpe's saying doable? Can we fund it? Can we get developers to build? Well, here's 3 examples where that happened. In 1994, see in the lower right, that was the old State Rehabilitation Center, formerly known as Attorney Tech. I was hired to put a plan together for it, which was built. You can see it in the upper left. It's 212 housing units. It's got a town square in the center of it. I showed you 5 acres of park. Wonderful new housing. It's sold out. This is Slavic Village in Cleveland, one of the roughest neighborhoods we have. We got the money primarily from the state of Ohio, some from the city. Battery Park, same deal. If you look at the lower left, you see the big building, the warehouse building. That's where the bunny came. He hopped into town and then he hopped out of town and left us with an environmental nightmare.
Thank you.
We applied, we got $2.5 million and we built. If you haven't seen it, you gotta go to the west side and see it. And as a result of this, the entire Gordon Square Arts District was revitalized. It's magnificent, one of the best things in Cleveland. The last one's in Cincinnati. I gotta show this
2
one.
seconds. 2
It's
seconds.
called Mercer Commons.
So much for Cincinnati.
It's one of the worst neighborhoods in Cincinnati, if you know it. It's called Over the Rhine, full of boarded up buildings, as you can see, razor wire. Some of the poorest people you can imagine lived here. My firm was hired by the local development corporation, 3D CD in
All
concert
right,
with the city.
time is up. Sorry, sir. Thank you so very much. You did a wonderful job in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
The
thank you,
bottom line is,
thank you.
I hope
Thank
you listen
Thank you.
and you understand that it can be done. You can take Over the Rhine and make it look like that. And there's your 3D model, kids.
Thank you so
You
much.
deserve it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you
I
for giving us
appreciate
the opportunity.
Oh, you're more than
Yes.
welcome, more than
Yes,
welcome.
I had to beg.
I-
You did well.
Well, Paul, you have to beg every now and then, you know.
Every now and
It's my last, maybe my last development meeting, right? So I gotta give you some heat.
We
But,
are just please know, we are totally in support of form-based zoning. I believe in it. I just think the zoning is a bit premature. We need some development planning, a conceptual development plan, which we can do. We're not pushing the
Paul,
plan that I drew.
Paul,
But
thank
you
you.
gotta understand.
Thank you, your time is up.
Okay.
Is there time
All
for
right, I'll
questions?
shut up.
Yes, I was just gonna get to you. Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can you address this chicken egg thing about?
All right, Tony, give him 2 seconds. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, ask the question, but you know.
That's the question.
No, he's a little
You know,
long-winded.
with this, what should come first, you know, the zoning,
Zoning
planning,
versus
the-
planning.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm hearing this discrepancy
Okay.
between, you know,
I'll make sure you got it.
Director Zamp put up the order in which things should happen.
Yeah.
And-
But that's a development strategy, and I think it's great.
Okay.
I think those boxes that talk about how development is pretty much a linear process. We're not talking about development here. We're talking about community planning and design, okay? And to get to stage 2 of his boxes, we take the zoning and the form-based planning and we marry them together. We have a vision statement. I thought we knew what we wanted. Even the mayor said he loved what we were doing till he decided he didn't like us and he wanted to do something different, but there was no surprise there, okay? But truly, Tony, it's a matter of deciding how to develop this in a way that there is enough form to base the zoning on.
Okay.
You have the framework of the zoning. Way too much on streets and not enough on real urban design type form and content that is always a part of
I
this.
think I understand.
Okay.
Okay, so because we have people that have 1:00 meetings, and so is there anyone else have and jobs? Anyone else have any questions? Yes.
Just make one quick comment to add on to what Paul was saying
Yes.
about building on the metro development.
Mhm.
This code, which Ryan all along is saying, I don't care what you put inside, I'm talking about the form itself. It so limits what we can do. I think it's 50,000 square feet of institutional and like 75,000 of light industrial. That means we could maybe do a little addition on Metro and not take advantage to any great extent of what goes on in University Circle. All the startups, they're gonna need more space. They should be coming here. I want them in East Cleveland too, but they should also be coming here.
Yeah.
And we're saying you can only do a little bit.
Thank you. Anybody, Fabio, go ahead.
I don't know where to begin. I mean, I'm just more of a sponge on all this, trying to really immerse myself in Severance as a whole. But certainly this morning shoveling my driveway came to mind. And so when we talk about, actually this morning and last night, I spent a lot of time reading all of the people's comments back in 2023. And I highly recommend everyone in this room to read those comments, to be reminded on what the residents are looking for. It's for the community. So if we build for the community or we build for the developer, NAMDAR will always do what's in the best interest of NAMDAR. And that's fair, that's what they've got. But we gotta really think this through in terms of what's best for our community. And what I read were two things that came to mind, obviously the green space and the importance of it, but also what to do for our elderly. And I think of myself at 55, I'm still healthy, but I want my golden years to be golden. I want walkability, I want a lot of action, I want a life. I want that experience with one car or no cars, that I can accomplish that on this campus, if you will, this village, if you will. And this really is our central business district. We have a gold mine here to make this the epicenter of Cleveland Heights. And so I step back and I want to pause to think about that when we talk about how this all interconnects with all the other neighborhoods. How does it connect with the existing business districts here? The way this thing is created, Van Aken, well, Shaker had no other small business districts, so it was built for a purpose to become the business district of Shaker Heights. Different needs. We've got 3 up to 5 different business districts around here that you don't want to create one big retail center that sucks the energy out of the other business districts that exist.
Yeah.
So we got to give that some consideration, in my opinion. But when I thought about the parking situation, and I thought, next house I want, it's either an attached garage or it's got a garage underneath it, but I am not shoveling to get to my car, period. And that is fair game. These are the type of things that need to be thought out. And the concept of form-based, when I look at form-based, I mean, that's a really cool topic. What I've gathered to date, a lot of times I see it works well with existing architecture, so you're building it consistent. I'd like to see more situations of where it's building out of scratch. But I look at, the question, if it's that hot of a topic, why isn't it implemented across the board across this country? And from the numbers I gather, it's still very little. It's about 6% of municipalities use strictly form-based coding. So it's young, it hasn't caught on. So I asked myself, well, what's the things against it? And we saw the presentation that was done by Impact. And in my opinion, when I saw that presentation, that's also what was written through the lens of a developer, of maximizing what a developer needs to do on that property. And so when you ask yourself, and you see these footprints of 6 feet or 6 stories by whatever width, it's their responsibility to maximize that particular box, that envelope that you hear about. And that gets away from us saying, no, based on visual experience, we want things 2-story. We want a Mediterranean roofline. Everybody's got to build off this same type of vibe. And that's the part that we've never seen. We don't want to lose that, because once this starts, there's no going back. Once we dig the shovels in, it's game over. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have 2 minutes. Is there anyone else? No. Thank you. I know you have to go, President Larson. I want to thank all of you all for coming to this Planning and Development Committee meeting. I hope it was been helpful. I hope you all were able to share your information in 20 minutes. You did really good there in your 25 minutes.
Well, I can't thank you enough for giving us the opportunity.
But I thank you all very much for coming. So be prepared. I'm gonna let President Larson remind you all of when the public hearing is.
The 15th at 5.
The 15th at 5 o'clock. So if you have anything else that you need to present, or I don't know if you can present at that meeting, but if you need anything else, please make sure you're at that meeting, the 15th at 5 o'clock, okay? All right, so thank you all. This meeting is now adjourned at 12:59.